Back to more typical weather for the UK. So a showery day on Wednesday, bright spells to end the week, and temperatures much closer to average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. 5 Tory leadership hopefuls will become 4 this evening. Who's going to make it? We're going to be talking to 2 Conservative MPs, one who is backing Rishi Sunak and another who is backing Tom Tugendhat. Also, BTECs, the government want to phase them out. We're speaking to an MP who did a BTEC about why she is battling to save them. Much, much more too. But first, it's the news with Rosie. Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. The body of a 13-year-old boy has been found after he was last seen in the River Tyne near Irvingham in Northumberland. A Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England and Wales as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 degrees Celsius. Police have warned of the dangers of bathing in open water. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed or will finish early today. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and some speed restrictions are in place. Network Rail says people should travel only if absolutely necessary. Meteorologist John Hammond told GB News the telltale signs to look out for heat stroke.
It's confusion, it's dizziness, it's nausea, it's headaches, and it's obviously sweatiness. But those are the symptoms of heat stress. The worry is that heat stress can quickly progress into heat exhaustion, and when that happens you actually stop sweating, so your mechanism for getting rid of heat from the body closes down, and then your body just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. That's heat stroke, and that can be incredibly serious, and you have to rush people to the hospital at very short notice at that point.
The heatwave is across the continent. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the high temperatures, which have lasted now for nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by dry conditions. More than 14,000 people have been evacuated in southwestern France in the last week. In Greece, 71 fires broke out in 24 hours over the weekend. Political news back here in the UK. The field of candidates in the race to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader will be whittled down again today as Tory MPs vote in now the 3rd secret ballot of the contest. Voting takes place between 5 o'clock and 7 this evening, with the result expected at 8. The candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. A third televised debate between the candidates has been cancelled because Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have declined to take part. Sky News have been due to host it. They say Conservative MPs are said to be concerned about the damage the debates are doing to the image of the party. The former Defence Secretary, Dr Liam Fox, is backing Rishi Sunak. He told us the former Chancellor can go all the way, despite reports he's not popular among the wider Conservative Party membership.
I did my own constituency executive there on Friday night, and he had gone down extremely well with the membership there. Ultimately, they have to choose who they think will be the best Prime Minister and who they think is best qualified to be the Prime Minister in under 2 months' time. And I think with the experience that he's got, the fact that he showed his courage in the Brexit debate when, as a young MP, he was being pressured by David Cameron to oppose Brexit, but he decided that despite what it might mean for his career, he was going to stick with his beliefs. I think that matters a great deal, and ultimately I think that's what leadership is.
The government's facing a confidence vote in Parliament today, amid calls for Boris Johnson to leave Number 10 immediately. If the government's defeated, it would almost certainly trigger a general election. However, that is unlikely. A significant number of Conservative MPs would have to vote against the government or abstain. Unusually, it's taking place as a government motion rather than the opposition's. It's after the government refused to accept the original wording of Labour's vote of no confidence motion. A Conservative police and crime commissioner has been banned from driving for 6 months for repeatedly speeding. Caroline Henry was caught breaking a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit 5 times in 12 weeks. She was elected as Nottinghamshire's police and crime commissioner in May 2021 and has pledged to crack down on speeding. The head of Ukraine's spy agency and the top state prosecutor have been suspended while an investigation takes place after dozens of people in their organisations were found to have been collaborating with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky said they had to take responsibility for more than 650 cases of treason which have been opened against their staff. He said more than 60 people from both departments are now working against Ukraine in Russian-occupied territories. The average asking price for a house has increased to a record high for the 6th month in a row. Rightmove says properties went on the market for an average just shy of £370,000 in July. That's an increase of 0.4% in a month. The low numbers of properties up for sale is one of the main reasons, with 40% fewer homes on the market than in 2019. MPs have said there's no clear evidence that the government's plan to send migrants to Rwanda will deter channel crossings. A report by the Commons Home Affairs Committee accuses ministers of hunting for radical new policies that might make good headlines instead of providing clear solutions. So far this year, more than 14,000 migrants have made the journey across the channel so far. It's thought as many as 60,000 could complete the crossing by the end of this year. This is GB News. I'll have more as it happens. Now let's head back to the briefing and Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, the final 5 candidates in the race to be our next Prime Minister will this evening be whittled down to 4. Tory MPs will vote later after a feisty debate last night. We'll speak to MPs supporting Rishi Sunak and Tom Tugendhat. We're talking vocational education today as BTECs are set to be scrapped. Some say this is a mistake. I'll discuss that with Labour MP Vicky Foxcroft, who did a BTEC herself. And I'll speak to Neil Coyle, the MP suspended from the Labour Party over alleged racist remarks about his battle with alcohol abuse. Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. The country is roasting and things are really hotting up in the battle for the Tory leadership and our next Prime Minister. MPs are voting, Conservative ones are voting this afternoon, and one hopeful will be eliminated at 8 o'clock. This morning, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss pulled out of further televised hustings after an acrimonious debate on ITV last night. Let's have a look back at some of the highlights.
There are no easy options. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. When I was working in the Treasury, it was always a choice between difficult option A, terrible option B, mad option C. And we need to be honest with the public about how difficult things are. The government can't solve everything, and we need to do better in terms of the way that we fix things.
The key to strikes on this question is to do with trust. If people trust the government and know that the government is on their side, then people are more willing to go that extra mile and to have that negotiation in good faith. And the absolute key to whoever we choose as Prime Minister is got to be somebody who people trust. That's why I'm arguing we need a clean start.
If he wished to serve, who here would be happy to have Boris Johnson in their cabinet? Please raise your hands.
Well, you asked what would make me a better Prime Minister, and it would be a really good team. My whole campaign has been built around building a team. My now legendary campaign video did not feature me at all. It was all about my colleagues and it was all about the country. And I think our leadership model that we've had in politics is completely broken. It doesn't deliver for people and we need a new approach. I recognise that, and I would look to build a team of all the talents in our party.
And Liz, in your past, you've been both a Liberal Democrat and a Remainer. I was just wondering which one you regretted most.
I am somebody who was not born into the Conservative Party. I went to school in Paisley and Leeds. I went to a comprehensive school. My parents were left-wing activists, and I've been on a political journey ever since. But my fundamental belief, and the reason I am a Conservative, is I saw kids at my school being let down in Leeds. I saw them not get the opportunities, not get the proper educational standards that you might have got at your school, Rishi. I saw them having wasted potential, and I thought that waste was wrong.
Our political correspondent is down in Westminster for us, Tom Harwood. What is the mood like after last night's debate, Tom?
Well, last night's debate certainly has made an impact, and the biggest way you can tell that it's made a significant impact is that the next debate, the debate that was to be the Sky News debate, has now been cancelled after both Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, two people who are seen to be relative frontrunners in this contest, both decided that it would be wrong to take part, that last night saw too much blue on blue, perhaps too much heat and maybe not enough light. After all, at this stage in the contest, it is MPs that are voting until we get down to the final two candidates who go out to the membership. Now, the latest that will happen is this Wednesday, because today, between 5 and 7 p.m, MPs vote to kick out the fifth place candidate, then 4 move forward to Tuesday's ballot. We get the results at 8 p.m. tonight, and then on Tuesday it's down to 3 and Wednesday down to 2. So that's the process over the next few days. I have to say that from 2 p.m. Today there will be a hustings here of the 1922 committee, behind closed doors of course, but these hustings potentially matter more in the minds of members of Parliament than the public debates, because this is when they get to ask questions directly of their candidates, and the people are there in the room with them potentially. That will weigh more on the minds of MPs. A lot of this contest is behind closed doors. But that's not the only thing that's happening in Parliament today. It's not only at 8 p.m. that we will see who gets knocked out of this round of the leadership contest. We've also got that confidence motion here in Parliament kicking off at around 4:30. That's when we can see Boris Johnson on his feet at the dispatch box, no doubt giving a bit of a valedictory speech of his time at number 10. It's a bit of his swan song, I suppose, the reason for this debate. And we'll get the voting on that confidence motion at around 10 p.m. today as well. So it's a relatively busy day in Parliament, even though that Sky News debate outside Parliament has now been cancelled.
So much going on, isn't there, in Westminster? Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, thank you. Joining me now from a scorching Westminster is the Conservative MP for Thirsk and Malton, Kevin Hollinrake. Kevin is supporting Rishi Sunak for leader. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us in the heat. We really do appreciate it. Just tell us, why is Rishi the candidate that you are backing?
Well, hi, Gloria. I mean, for number one, he's got the experience right at the top level of government. He's got the right values, a true blue Conservative, and he's got the ideas. He's shown the ability to come up with new ideas, to innovate and to implement. So I think for all those reasons, he's, for me, the only real choice.
The fight is now really bitter, a series of attacks, not just on each other from the candidates, but on the record of your government. Attacks that could really have lasting consequences on the reputation of your party. Would you advise the candidates to rein it in?
I'm all for a robust debate. You've got to challenge other people's thinking, other people's ideas. I did see in one of the debates, I don't really think this is damaging the Conservative Party, actually. One of the debates, I think it was the Friday night on Channel 4 debate, if I can mention that channel, but they asked for a show of hands amongst the audience who now will vote Conservative, who wouldn't have done before. And I think there was at least 10 people put their hands up. So I think this frank exchange of ideas, the ability to hear directly from potential leadership candidates is quite good for the party. But I do think it should be constructive. It should be about the issues, not about the people.
Would you say that it was constructive for your candidate, Rishi Sunak, to call Liz Truss a socialist and ask her whether she most regretted being a Lib Dem or voting Remain? Was that below the belt?
I don't think he called her a socialist, actually. I saw that reported. I think he said the policy wasn't conservative, it was socialism. Just because you have an idea that appears socialist doesn't mean you are a socialist. I don't think Liz Truss is a socialist. But I think, again, it's fair to ask questions about people's past thoughts, past ideas and current ideas. And I think Liz is positioning herself now as on the right wing. And I think it's important that people can see that she had different views earlier on. But as she says, she's been on a journey. I respect that, and I think for me now she's more towards the right place than perhaps she was before. But nevertheless, I think it's fair to raise the issue.
She did fire back at Rishi Sunak. She had a go at him, or insinuated that he had had a privileged private education unlike her. Is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister?
No, not at all. And I think it's really wrong to criticise somebody for where they went to school, whether that be a state school or a private school. Just because Rishi's parents made sacrifices so that he could go to private school, I think that's to be welcomed. Lots of other people make those choices. So I don't think that's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to criticise his past success, his personal success or his family's success. I think people should be judged on their merits, their individual values, their ideas, their capabilities, not on their background.
And are there any concerns or anxieties in the Team Rishi camp that he won't make the final two? It looks all but certain, but these things are unpredictable, aren't they?
Of course they are. We can't take anything for granted, either in terms of getting into the last two or winning amongst the membership. We've got a lot of work to do. I think Rishi has done very well in the last few days in terms of the debates. I know that will continue, but we can't take anything for granted until we get over the line, hopefully on the 5th of September.
It's a scorching hot day today. I notice you're not wearing a tie. Will you have to wear a tie in the chamber in this baking heat? I mean, I really hope you don't, but there's some weird and wonderful rules in that House of Commons chamber, aren't there, Kevin?
Well, I think you're right, and I would never fall foul of Mr. Speaker, and I guess the rules probably won't be relaxed. So in the chamber, I definitely would be wearing a tie, but I thought just in terms of the baking heat, and the fact I've also got a sun lamp in front of me as well, I thought it probably people think I was a bit odd if I was wearing a tie right now.
Kevin Hollenberg, really good to talk to you today. Enjoy the heat. Take care.
Gloria. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to be talking with Conservative MP Stephen Hammond, who is supporting Tom Tugendhat, Conservative leadership. Back in a minute.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Now, we hear a lot about university, but it's expensive and it's certainly not for everyone. Many young people have found their way into the workplace and indeed university via BTECs, but these qualifications are set to be phased out. Colleges have criticised the change, saying the new system will exclude the poorer students. A public petition to reinstate, to keep funding for BTECs has now reached the threshold to be debated in the House of Commons. That debate takes place this afternoon. Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has been looking at why the move has attracted so much opposition.
Nearly 250,000 students completed BTECs last year, qualifications that for decades have been a gateway to a whole host of trades.
I was really terrible at exams. I really struggled. So for me, a BTEC was just perfect. It was more vocational. And it actually meant by the time I got to university and actually even to the workplace, I was actually more advanced than some of my peers and colleagues.
But now the government is planning to phase them out in favour of T-levels. 175 colleges will be offering the new qualification from September. The government says the new T-levels will simplify things and encourage more students into technical training. But head teacher Jill Burbridge thinks this is a red herring.
Because most students navigate their choices really effectively. Most school sixth forms and colleges, sixth form colleges and FE colleges that are offering 16 to 19 education have a range of courses available which are very clearly explained, and students are equipped to be able to make the choices.
So what's the difference? Both T-levels and BTECs are equal in terms of standards and what students may learn. Both hold equal weight with employers and universities, but T-levels place a higher emphasis on work placement. Students will be working in a real job with a real boss and real accountability. And that's where the problem lies. Sourcing these work placements is no mean feat.
The challenge of getting a vast array of employers, often who are small employers, to take a significant number of students for 45 days of work placement is really, really challenging. So that means that if the BTECs are scrapped, there's going to be a massive hole in our vocational provision.
A petition to keep BTECs has garnered over 100,000 signatures, along with support from MPs on all sides, and will be debated in the House today. The government hopes educators will see the new T-levels as the gold standard, but many fear the new system has a long way to go before it achieves gold. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Joining me now is Vicky Foxcroft, Labour MP for Lewisham Deptford, who is one of a handful of MPs who has a BTEC qualification. Vicky Foxcroft, welcome. So you did a BTEC. I bet there aren't many MPs who share that experience, are there?
No, I don't think there are many MPs in Parliament that have studied BTECs, but it's a really important qualification, and it's what went and got me to be able to go on to university in the future. Somebody who actually never thought that university was an option to them.
And you're speaking in the debate in the House of Commons this afternoon. What's the key points that you're going to be making?
I think there's several really important points. One is, we're removing a system without making sure that we've tried and tested the other system. But also, BTECs can be that route in to university. And actually, for a lot of people who struggled for a multitude of different reasons in the education system, actually, BTECs can be that route that goes and delivers, more formal qualifications, but also helps you get into the workplace.
Why didn't you do A-levels?
I didn't get any GCSEs at school, and so a BTEC was the option for me.
So literally a BTEC enabled you to go to university. That was your route to get to university?
Absolutely, 100%. And it was through doing my BTEC that actually we were encouraged to apply for university, something, a system I never would have known how to navigate on my own.
The government has looked at this and it does acknowledge that students from special educational needs and those with disabilities, those from deprived areas, are disproportionately represented on courses at risk of losing funding. But they say that the new qualifications, simplifying them, they'll make it easier for students and employers to understand them. So if it's all T levels or A levels, then everyone will know where they are.
But the problem is that there's many universities, such as Oxford and Cambridge, who will not recognise T-levels as a route into studying there, but they will recognise BTECs as a route into studying there. I've just put in some research with the House of Commons Library to go and find out the exact figures on that, so I've not got that at the moment. But, you know, that kind of says, you know, how educational institutions actually view a BTEC in relation to how they actually view the T-level subjects.
It sounds like the government could be listening because, although there's a lot of upheaval in the government at the moment, but last November, the government said it would delay the reform timetable by a year. So qualifications now due to lose funding in 2024. It was going to be 2023, but there's an opportunity to sort of renew the campaign and renew the debate, isn't there?
Absolutely, and I think we need to keep that pressure on the government. But, you know, the House of Lords asked for them to have a 3-year delay, and they didn't, you know, deliver this because we've got to make sure that it's properly tried and tested and that it's not levelling down, but it actually is genuinely levelling up.
And when you meet constituents who are doing BTECs in your own constituency, do they tend to be from a background like yours, from a non-traditional background, that the one that we normally associate with going to university?
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, during the pandemic, we lost one of my tutors who went and taught me during my BTEC. Now, not just for me in terms of the experience that went and had, but actually thousands of students, many of whom I have never met, have talked about the difference that the BTEC and the tutors that go and deliver those went and made to their lives.
And it sounds like it's not just Labour MP or opposition MPs that are going to be speaking in this debate this afternoon. Do you expect to have some support from Conservative colleagues who actually, to be fair, are going to have a much bigger voice in this debate, arguably, than opposition MPs?
Absolutely, and I really, really hope that they make sure that their opposition to this is heard extremely loud.
Vicky Foxcroft, Labour MP for Lewisham Deptford. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, let's talk with Stephen Hammond, the Conservative MP for Wimbledon. We're going back to the Conservative leadership race. Stephen is supporting Tom Tugendhat. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen, for joining us. Tom Tugendhat, he might well be out of the race today. What do you think?
Well, he might be, but he might not be. I think he's ignited this race by standing up and saying we need integrity back in politics, that we need to look at making sure that voters can trust us. And in the 2 debates so far, if you look at who the public is saying they'd like to see in the final 2, and if you're looking at who the public's saying they'd like to see in number 10, Tom is showing through very strongly. And I hope my colleagues will be looking at what the public want rather than just what they want.
The argument that he is prosecuting Tom Tugendhat is that he is the only clean break candidate. If you follow that logic, it suggests that all the other candidates are a problem if we accept Tom Tugendhat's premise that he's the only clean break candidate. Is that a problem for you?
I'm not getting into the blue on blue. I'm there to put Tom's case positively, which is that we need a clean start, we need some fresh faces at the top table, we need a government of all the talent so that we can govern for this country. We've got some severe problems with the economy, a lot of which is caused internationally, as you know, cost of living. We've also got a major problem in Ukraine. Tom has shown through his background and his service that he'll absolutely be on top of that. And he's also shown, I think, throughout this campaign, we're not doing blue on blue. We're doing the case for a clean start. We're doing the case for integrity in British politics.
Give us an insight into what's going on behind the scenes today on the Tom Tugendhat campaign. Are you hitting the phones? Are you talking to colleagues? Because, of course, Parliament doesn't sit today until 2:30. That's when MPs will arrive back there. What's your plan to keep Tom Tugendhat on that ballot paper?
Well, today, a number of us have met with Tom. We've chatted about how he's going to make 1 or 2 pitches to the 22 hustings later on. He's also talking at the Conservative Environment Group hustings. We've obviously got plans, as every other campaign has, to talk to colleagues, put our case, suggest that they actually want to listen to what was said over the weekend in these debates, look at who the public want. Yeah, we're hitting the phones, we're talking to colleagues, and Tom is doing the same. And then I'm sure he'll perform very well at the hustings this afternoon.
And I was looking at your majority. It's very narrow. You very narrowly won your seat. I think it was 600 and odd votes at the last election. So
628.
28. 628, yeah. I've been in some of those counts. I know what they are like. But it really matters to you, doesn't it?
You know
because, of
like.
course, you are fighting you'll be fighting for your life at the next election. So you really must have thought long and hard about who to back.
I have, because I've been a Conservative ever since I left university. I believe in the Conservative Party, I believe in values, and I think the Conservative Party provides the best government for this country. But I recognise, and I said straight away, I'm not going to defend the indefensible, and I'm not going to defend behaviour that breaks integrity in politics. And so I have thought really hard about it. I've thought really hard about that point, and I thought really hard about some of the things that we need to do as the government in the next 2 years to re-win the trust of the public and win a general election.
And you said that you were not going to get involved in blue-on-blue attacks. It was pretty savage last night. The briefing is pretty hostile. All those things are on the record. No one can delete them from the record. Do you have any advice for the leadership candidates and their teams to rein it in a bit?
I think one of the things that was noticeable last night against Friday night's debate probably was that Tom said rather less, because actually he didn't want to get involved in those. My advice to all camps is we have to unite as a party. We're going to have to unite around the next Prime Minister. We're going to have to unite around a Conservative agenda. And if I were them, I would think more carefully about putting their positive case to colleagues this afternoon rather than having a go at each other.
And final question, I don't know if I'll get anywhere, but I'll give it a go. Have you thought about where your vote will go if Tom Tugendhat is eliminated?
Well, Gloria, you're absolutely spot on. You're not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to think about that. My job today, as you've already asked, is to talk to colleagues and persuade them the best man for the job is Tom Tugendhat.
Oh, well, Stephen Hammond, really good to talk to you, and please come and talk to us throughout this campaign. Thank you.
I'd love to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. After the news, I'll be talking with Labour MP Tonya Antonescu and her constituent Claire Anna Mitchell, who is working to get medicine into the Ukraine. That's after the news.
Good afternoon, it's 12:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The body of a 13-year-old boy has been found after he was last seen in the River Tyne near Ovingham in Northumberland. A Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England and Wales as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 degrees centigrade. Police have warned of the dangers of bathing in open water to keep cool. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed or will finish early today. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and some speed restrictions are in place. Network Rail says people should travel only if absolutely necessary. Meteorologist John Hammond told us of the telltale signs to look out for heat stroke. The heat wave is across the continent. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the high temperatures, which have lasted nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by dry conditions. Political news in the UK now, and the field of candidates to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader will be whittled down again today as Tory MPs vote in the third secret ballot of the contest. The candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. A third televised debate between the candidates has been cancelled tonight because Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss declined to take part. Sky News have been due to host it. They say Conservative MPs are concerned about the damage the debates are doing to the image of the party. A Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner has been banned from driving for 6 months for repeatedly speeding. Caroline Henry was caught breaking a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit 5 times in 12 weeks. She was elected as Nottinghamshire's Police and Crime Commissioner in May 2021 and had pledged to crack down on speeding. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Shortly, we'll be back to the briefing with Gloria.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Now it's time for our constituency surgery, where we talk about an issue that an MP and their constituents are working on together for change. Joining me in the studio is Tonya Antoinazzi, Labour MP for the Gower, and her constituent Claire Anna Mitchell, who's been working to get vital medicines into Ukraine. So, Claire, let's start with you, the constituent. How did the two of you come to work together?
We started. I was collecting aid for a church in Neath, which is a little bit out of Swansea, and it snowballed. People were very, very generous. It went a bit bonkers. So the first contact I had with Tonya was that I just said, "Can you share this on social media for me?" And yeah, so that was our very first connection on the appeal.
And Tonya, you remember first meeting Claire and...
Yeah. I mean, Gloria, it's been amazing, the work that Claire Anna has done in the, not just in Gower, but across South Wales. And, as she said, it snowballed because people wanted to help the people in Ukraine. We wanted to get aid out there as quickly as possible. And Claire Anna was introduced to me, who just an absolute, dynamo, really, an absolute dynamo, wanting to get, medical supplies and aid out there and collecting. And so we use social media platforms in order to, really push out there the great work that Claire Anna was doing and is doing.
Claire Anna, tell me about the sort of medical supplies that are needed and why they're so vital.
Okay, so mainly we have been concentrating on IFAC kits, which is individual first aid kits. So it's sort of military-grade medical kits for soldiers. So the people we've been supporting out there have been civilian battalions. So the Ukrainian army have got stuff, kind of. Right. But the civilians, they've literally been given a gun and said, off you go, go and fight. They've got their trainers and jeans on, and no protective gear, no medical equipment, so tourniquets, there's really bandages, chest seals. I mean, it's awful, thinking that we've been purchasing chest seals for someone who's getting shot. But it's absolutely vital, life-saving equipment. We've had letters back from the battalions because we hand deliver them to the battalions. We've had letters, weekly saying, "This saved 3 men in my battalion this week."
Really?
And I mean, we don't do it for that, obviously, but to know that it's working, and the sad thing is that we're needed. We shouldn't be needed, but we are needed, and
So just talk me through this process, because as Tonya says, you're a dynamo. So
I
you
am
have, you have this idea,
Sure.
which is to get medical supplies into Ukraine. How do you go from that idea to what's the journey to getting them into the Ukraine? How do you do it? What's the process?
There was a little bit of a hiccup, actually, in which Tonya helped me with. That was my second contact with Tonya, is we couldn't get things through customs to begin with. We hadn't taken the trucks out at that time, but we were foreseeing the issue that they needed everything to be itemised and coded. And, you have something paracetamol from Asda, one from Aldi, it's going to have different codes.
Right.
So to do all of that, we wouldn't have the manpower, we wouldn't have the machinery to do that. And if you saw the church and my house was just jam-packed full of all of this kit. So yeah, we had to overcome that issue in customs. So I spoke to Tonya, I spoke to Rebecca Evans, I spoke to a few different politicians and councillors, local councillors as well, who helped push in Westminster them to change there's a law, change the policy. To try and get get the aid through easier.
And this is one of the reasons why we do these constituency surgeries, because actually it probably inspires other people to get in touch with their MPs. Yeah. I wouldn't say MPs have a magic wand, but my goodness, having those 2 letters after your name can really get things moving. Just tell us how you were able to support Claire's work.
She has a magic wand.
But it is a bit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not miracle workers, we're MPs, but it's having that, those parliamentary levers to be able to raise issues in Parliament. And it is Never Surrender, the group that has evolved thanks to people like Claire Anna, and it's that work that's being done. Claire Anna came to me on the third occasion and was really, really key, so concerned about the drivers that were very close to Dnipro and the stores that had been destroyed by bombing, and that was why I stood up in Parliament and asked for a meeting. So we are now due to have a meeting with James Heapy to discuss the support that the MOD can give to Never Surrender and to get those medical supplies safely out to where they need to be in Ukraine.
And where next for the campaign for you? Or where next for the sort of on-the-ground work that you're doing?
Well, this is the problem. The donations from the public have dried up. People have got war fatigue. People have donation fatigue. That happens. It's understandable. It's to be expected. But, so, yeah, we do need to sort of gather stuff from elsewhere now. We've tried, fundraising and whatnot, and it's a no-go. It's just stopped now. So we do have to try and, firstly, when we meet James, hopefully...
You're both going to meet the minister.
Wait for it, James. If you're watching, watch out. I'm very, very excited about that.
Have you got a date yet?
No, we are waiting for confirmation.
But you've got confirmation that he's going to meet with you. And so your MP and the constituent going to meet the minister.
And some other members of Never Surrender, hopefully, to...
Just tell us a bit about Never Surrender.
So, yeah, Never Surrender. So it's a kind of group of us, like co-founders. There's 6 of us. Most of them are businessmen from England. We've got 2 Ukrainian businessmen as well on board. They're brilliant. And we're all fighting for exactly the same thing. What we're going to ask James for is to hopefully open up his old military stores to give us any sort of out-of-date equipment that is obviously non-lethal, but anything that is out-of-date for British military standards. Because, things maybe gathering dust and we want them. And these people, it doesn't matter if they've got a Cat tourniquet that's a Generation 5 when ours is a Generation 7, they haven't got anything. They will work with this. So, they need everything. So that's one thing we're doing. The other thing is that we're going to try and get some corporate sponsors, so we can get some regular sponsorship. And we've got some sponsorship packages in place. So we've got a few ideas, but come on, James, we need your help. They really need your help. It's a desperate situation over there. And I think being off the news now, it's...
well, we've brought you. We've brought your campaign to the nation's attention set. And it's been really nice to meet a human dynamo and show why it is always worth getting in touch with your MP if you've got a cause to champion.
Amazing.
Tonya and Claire Anna, thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Now, Criminal barristers are going on strike again this week, bringing more disruption to British courts. The walkout centres around concerns regarding cuts to legal aid funding and unsatisfactory working conditions. Hundreds of barristers say they're struggling to cope with low pay and long hours. Alice Porter spent the day with one to see what life is like and why he felt the need to strike.
Last year I earned just over £20,000. It's just not possible to live off that wage in London.
With their wigs and gowns, criminal barristers are often thought of as high earners from privileged backgrounds. But Zaid Ahmed knows the reality is very different.
I was raised in a single-parent family. Because of the issues at home, I had to work since the age of 16.
So criminal barristers are usually paid by legal aid. Can you just explain what that is and why it's so important?
People don't have the vast sums of money saved up to be able to afford to pay for a lawyer out of the blue, and that's why legal aid is so important. It just means that you get adequate representation straight away when you are charged with an offence.
Today, Zaid is representing a client who has been charged with assault. It requires a lot of preparation for little money.
I've already spent 2 hours and it's likely going to take another 2 hours, so I'm going to be paid £50 for today's hearing.
Well, it's 11 o'clock now. The hearing was meant to start an hour ago and it still hasn't begun. And these types of delays are incredibly common because there is such a backlog of cases. If you look at magistrates' courts alone, there are more than 358,000 outstanding cases. Now, ministers say that the strike action by the barristers will make that backlog worse, but the barristers say that they're partly caused by so many of them leaving the profession. As Zaid only earns £20,000 as a criminal barrister, he works a second job as a duty solicitor. So if someone is arrested, he's called into the police station, which happened during the night before we met.
The time is 2:36. I've received a call to represent somebody who's been arrested at a London police station, so I'm just going to make my way as I am on call today.
With long hours and poor pay, many people might wonder why someone would choose to spend their life defending a potential criminal.
Well, I had a case recently where the testimony of the complainant was completely false, and this was on a sexual assault case where the client was awaiting trial for 4 years. It may appear that someone may be guilty and the evidence may be strong, but that doesn't mean they are.
Back at his office, Zaid prepares for a conference which he will not be paid for, nor are any of his travel expenses.
I had to travel to Worcester Crown Court for a sentencing hearing, and the fee to get there by train was £65. The total fee that I got for that hearing was £126. So half of that had already gone before I even managed to get to court.
The government say that over the 3 days of strike action last week, around 17% of hearings were disrupted, which has only served to delay justice for victims. And criminal barristers will receive a 15% fee uplift from September. But Zaid says it won't help.
None of those cases that we are currently dealing with, that are currently set for trial within the next 3 years, are going to be impacted. So that means that the increase is only going to affect us in 3-4 years' time.
With another round of strikes taking place this week, our courts will continue to be disrupted. But for barristers like Zaid, they're not giving up until their justice is served. Alice Porter, GB News.
Now, recognising that you have a problem is always the first step to finding a solution. MP Neil Coyle has opened up about his drinking problem and how he's on a journey to recovery. Now, I'm pleased now to be joined by Neil Coyle in the studio. Welcome, Neil.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the tough bit. So you were elected to Parliament in 2015,
Yep.
Talked about the fact that you have been a heavy drinker. How much were you drinking? How long do you think it's been a problem?
So, I'm not going to pretend that Parliament was the sole cause of being an irresponsible drinker, because I think looking back from now, and it's almost 20 weeks since stopping drinking, I can see that there was a problem with drinking for many years, including at university. So, and I was, parents took me in the pub from the age of about 13, I think. So, this goes back some time, but... And initially, when elected, it wasn't to the same degree, but I think the particular stresses have contributed, and what was fascinating looking back now is thinking that, in recess, when Parliament wasn't sitting, I was able to stop, able to lose weight, able to get on with other things. But as soon as we're back, the patterns return, and actually they build up. And for me, it was beer after work rather than anything else. But by the time I reached the point where I was able to seek support to stop, we're talking about 12, 15 pints a night. Yeah.
Last night. My goodness, that is.
And if I had carried on, I think it would have killed me because, you know, as part of stopping, they did some health checks to check there was fundamentally no organ damage. And the heart check was the scariest because they said it was far too fast and far too irregular. So atrial fibrillation was there, which meant I was at very severe risk of stroke.
Goodness.
So I have a 6-year-old, so this is incredibly scary. And as I say, if it hadn't been for stopping, I could have been on a fast track, certainly to long-term damage to my body, if not outright a stroke and potentially it being fatal. So it's very scary to...
You're young. You're young, right?
43. So
43.
Yeah, young for an MP, I think.
But 43 and the sort of scan suggested that you could have, if you'd have continued, you were at high risk of a stroke.
Yeah, and stopping, and again, put a bit of scale on it, stopping has meant I've lost over 2 stones. So that's a lot.
Wow.
That's a lot of extra pressure on your heart, the weight as well. So stopping drinking has helped lose weight, but also the change in diet that comes from that as well, and the extra exercise. So I feel a lot better for doing it, but, you know, it's as I say, it's been very scary to have this massive wake-up call.
Yeah, what was the wake-up call? What was the final wake-up call when you said, I am going to get sober, that's it?
So there were a couple of incidents in Parliament which resulted from intervention by the House authorities and complaints about my behaviour, and for which I'm very sorry. You know, I make, you know, I'm not claiming alcohol as an excuse for bad behaviour. It's not an excuse for bad behaviour. But through that process, I was able to seek support. I had sought support before. It was very problematic trying to access something as fast as necessary. So one of the things I would like to see is a bit more support and a bit more sort of trigger mechanisms and actually some whistleblowing systems within Westminster to try and prevent other colleagues ending up in, well, actually just to support them to better manage their own health. And this isn't just MPs, because Westminster, I think last time I saw figures, about 30,000 people have passes for Westminster construction, catering, postage, you name it, security. And I think there is an atmosphere, and people like to be associated with the bars and the networking and the gossip. And, you know, you can see who's in there more routinely, you can see how long they're in there more routinely, and there are opportunities to try and prevent anyone going down the route, sadly, that I've ended up down. And I would, you know, when I did the unit count at the end of all this, that was terrifying as well. And if everyone was able to support it to monitor that, it might act as an early warning system.
Just to explain a bit about what you mean by a whistleblower system or something.
So you know, there's bar staff, there's security on every gate in Westminster. So if you see people leaving, the worse for wear. But also if you just see someone in the bar routinely, you know, day in, day out.
Yes, and there are some. You know, I can visualise them who sit in a bar for, you know, from sort of 11:30 midday, and they're still there for a number of hours, and they're having their first drink before lunch.
Yeah, and you know, and as I say, my unit take. You know, my own health was bad enough, and I certainly wasn't one of the worst for being in this. So it's so these people are known to many across the house. So there are opportunities, and actually, I would say that if any staff in any bit of Parliament were worried about someone or thought there might be an issue, they should be able to have an alert, a discreet alert that doesn't. It's not about punishment. It's about intervening.
Just like putting out your hand, holding out your hand, as it were.
Pastoral support.
You were suspended from the Labour Party, which obviously would have been a massive blow to you. Perhaps it was your big wake-up call that stopped you drinking. What's the latest on that, Neil?
So, you know, I've been a member since I was about 16, so it was horrendous. And I'm not allowed to talk about the specifics, but as I say, I'm sorry for my behaviour, bad language that fundamentally have led me to be here. There's actually an independent complaints and grievance service investigation underway. So when that concludes, the party will move, is my expectation. I'm very much hoping to be the Labour candidate for Birmingham and Southwark at the next election, and I hope that talking about this acts as a means of supporting others and not just MPs, anywhere, because I think if everyone was doing that unit count, it would really act as an alert. So
just tell us, just explain that. So if anybody's worried about their drinking,
and you don't have to want to stop. The recommended units a week is 14. Each pint is 2.5.
14. I mean, like
14.
I mean, it sounds. Well,
I mean, I bet there aren't many MPs that stick to that. Or you know, there'll be lots of people. I mean, you probably, even if you just drink a weekend, you're probably going to exceed 14.
But this is the point. If you're at all concerned about how much, just keep it under tap. There's a Drink Aware app you can get on your phone where you can just stick your units in by drink, and then you'll know, for good or bad, you'll know exactly what your intake is and whether you need to take steps.
Neil Coyle, former Labour MP, 20 weeks tomorrow, you will be sober. Good luck on your journey, and thank you for being so open. I think it will help others. Thank you, Neil Coyle. Thank you for getting in touch today. Liz says if Tom Tugendhat knows how to fight his enemies and hold on to his friends, then he is what the party needs. Ian says as Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have refused to take part in the third leadership contest debate, surely they should now be eliminated from the contest for failing to take part in all the tests. Michael says we can see what Sunak and Truss are doing. They both are desperate to eliminate Penny Mordaunt before Thursday. Both know she will win. Jennifer, on the other hand, says, I would vote for Liz Truss. She's the only one that has delivered Brexit opportunities in government. Well, just before we go, you may have noticed there's been an awful lot of spending commitments and promises on tax cuts by many of the Conservative leadership candidates. Well, I'm now joined just over in the on the sofa by Liam Halligan. Liam, what do you make of all these spending pledges?
Well, the idea of whether or not there should be tax cuts was really centre stage, wasn't it, Gloria, during that leadership debate last night? Rishi Sunak, he maintains, the former Chancellor, that any tax cut would be inflationary. Yet a lot of the other candidates, we're not going to see another debate now, but they've been saying since the start of this leadership contest that the Tories need to pledge immediate tax cuts and soon. That's exactly the question that I'll be examining in the next hour on The Money. I've been away for a week, but I'm back and I'll be asking, are tax cuts inflationary? Is the Chancellor right? Or should the Tories now be pledging lower taxes for households and for firms?
You do wonder, Liam, about some of the, attacks, really, on one candidate to another candidate when they're saying that socialist or even Jeremy Corbyn didn't propose spending like that. I mean, do any of those attacks stand up to any scrutiny for a start?
I think there's been a lot of what we call blue-on-blue conflict, hasn't there? We've seen it in both these leadership debates with the different leadership hopefuls, aides briefing against each other and anonymous quotes getting into the newspapers. I think Rishi Sunak has been trying to set out his stall by saying that it would be irresponsible to borrow for not just investment spending, but for day-to-day government spending too, which he says some of the other leadership hopefuls are proposing. And he claims that Jeremy Corbyn didn't even propose that. I think he's being a bit economical with the actuality, if you like, but I guess all's fair during love and a Tory leadership contest. It strikes me, though, it is a shame for democracy that the two leading candidates, or two of the leading candidates, seem to have put the kibosh on another debate, because whatever you think about this political process, however sick and tired we all are of politics out there across the UK, what we saw in the leadership debate last night was the start of an actual debate, and a really important debate that I think we need to have. Should we be lowering taxes from where they are now, currently headed for the highest they've been since World War II? So I, for one, while I understand people get sick and tired of politicians talking, I think it's a shame, Gloria, that we're not going to have this final televised leadership debate.
Liam Halligan, it's so good to have you back with us. Thank you, as ever, for your expert assessment. You have been watching and listening to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. I'm back every Monday to Thursday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam. But for now, it is time for your scorching weather forecast.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. The Met Office have in force a red warning for extreme heat and an amber warning for much of southern Scotland, England, as well as Wales. Unprecedented temperatures are expected. That's why there's a big fuss about this. We've never recorded temperatures as high in the UK as this plume of extremely hot air moves up. They've had red warnings in France, they've had red warnings in Portugal this week, yellow and orange warnings in Spain. So much of Western Europe under this heat. For many parts of the UK, it's a sunny day, and it's warm in Scotland, warm in Northern Ireland, but the highest temperatures, plus 35 or higher, expected across much of England and Wales, 38 Celsius in one or two spots. It's going to get even hotter than that on Tuesday, and actually very little relief from the heat. Overnight tonight, it could be the UK's warmest night on record, and it's because of that extraordinary daytime heat and temperatures from Glasgow down to